So this is the part where we actually do have the most work to do, but it's still not bad. We're largely just copying and pasting, and we are going to review what's going on. So when we created our LightSwitch front end, in the source code folder right here, that's where we see the breakdown of the main pieces of the application itself. We have hooks, which, are triggered by events. We have context, which provides basically extra metadata. We have the configuration itself. We have the individual components that make up what the application does. And then you stitch it all together with a front end in the app. Now, like I said, some of these files are unchanged, and some of them are definitely changed. Let's start with, we're going to work our way from the bottom to the top with hooks. This file is unchanged. If we actually look at my source code, back on GitHub, we can scroll down to hooks and use client mount. These are line for line the change. There are 12 lines, and here there are 12 lines, and they're unchanged. So we don't really have anything to worry about right here. If we go into the context, there were some things here that were changed. This is really the metadata section. Now, I could just copy the metadata section and leave the rest alone, and that would be fine. I am going to copy the whole raw file, though, just for simplicity's sake. Flip back to my editor, go to the context, grab it all, paste it, and save it. Again, this changes the metadata where we see the name, the description, where it's going to run, and then some basic icons. So that finishes hooks and context. We can collapse those to get them out of the way. Next, we have the config. Now, the config doesn't really change either, with the exception of the networks that we're using. By default, it scaffolds for Ethereum Mainnet and Arbitrum. Well, this is one of the bigger changes that we see is, of course, we're using Monad Testnet. Now, the cool thing about AppKit is it comes with Monad Testnet. So we just change our import to Monad Testnet, and we change our network to Monad Testnet, and that's really about it here. Now, you see this mention of a project ID on these lines right here. We are going to walk through creating our own project ID in the next video. For now, copy the guts right here, flip on back to your config, and paste it in so it's set to Monad Testnet. And just like that, 3 of the 5 folders we're going to work on are done. Now, components, we obviously have some changes. The action button, interestingly though, does not have changes. The action component really just handles wallet connect and disconnect, and that's about it. It also handles network switching too. Now, if it gives you the warm fuzzies, you can go ahead and go to the action button and copy this and override it, but you don't need to because it is really the same. Now, the connect button itself, again, pretty much staying the same, except for what I scaffolded is a little bit different. So when I look at the connect button right here, it really just has the AppKit button connected right there. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the function for the AppKit connect button, and I'm going to override it like so. So now that it actually says connect wallet on the screen. Next, we have the info list file right here. So if we scroll on back and look at info list, I believe nothing changed in this particular file either, except for it does give you some good things like state and wallet info. Now, if I flip on back, we see it has state and wallet info here, as well as a theme section. Let's scroll on back, and yep, theme section is here. So all of these are the same, or at least this one is the same, but I'm going to copy and override it just to be safe. So out of these 3 components, only the connect button had noticeable changes, but there's also a 4th component created here, which is where the LightSwitch action is actually handled itself. This is where we use a switch container to switch is on, to either on or off, like we see right there. So this is where we actually see the switch move, like this is where we actually are creating the visualization of the switch being changed on or off. So let's go ahead and copy the guts of LightSwitch.tsx, and we'll create a new file called LightSwitch.tsx, like so, and we'll paste it in right there. We'll collapse the components folder, and we're left with the app folder. The fonts remain unchanged, so don't worry about that. We have CSS, we have layout.tsx, and we have page.tsx. Obviously, all of this is changing because this is where the main application happens. Let's start with CSS. This is where we're setting our theme, our fonts, and our images. We can go ahead and paste this in like so. The big things, of course, are the switch sliders that we see right there. There's also a little bit of media where we're going to have like an image set up right there and button toggles and so on. It's big, but it's also reactive, so it'll work well on mobile. Next up, we're going to grab our layout, which sets the guts of our page right here. Again, we see things like the title, the description, and then underneath it, we're going to have the context provider and the children so that data can get passed to and from that. We'll copy and paste the layout in like so, and there we go. Worth pointing out, for the most part, the only thing that really changed in the layout is the metadata right here. Of course, the page.tsx is where the entire application happens. So let's scroll on back here and look at page.tsx. We'll copy and paste it in, and then make one small but very important edit to the very top. And that is our contract address. This was my contract address from when we first started out and I was first labbing this. Of course, we set the real contract address that we deployed right here in an environment file. So I'll copy this and I'll put it in page.tsx and save the file to make sure it's good. We establish the contract address and then what the input variables are that we expect to see. The isOn variable, the toggle variable, the getState variable, and if we wanted to scaffold withdrawal functionality, we could potentially do that right here. But these are the inputs that we can use with the smart contract. So we see the functions like it, or the variables like isOn, toggle, and getState. Then, of course, the event that gets emitted, switch toggled right there. From the home page, we are looking to see if the wallet is connected, and then also establishing potentially what the hooks are for state management of the transaction when we submit a transaction. The state changes whenever the button is clicked. As of now, there's not really anything going on. The first thing we do is read the contract state. We specify the contract address, we specify the contract metadata, we run the function getState, and that's where we actually figure out what the current state is. Here we establish some variables for changing the contract as well as awaiting the transaction status as well. All of these are managed in state management and hooks yet again. The magic really happens right here in the handle toggle function, which is where we specify the function of handle toggle coming from the contract ABI. And then the actual front end code itself, of course, comes under the return itself. Here we see the handle toggle button. Upon click, it runs the handle toggle function. It sets the state of pending or confirming, as well as processing, and it sets the state of the transaction status when it ultimately transitions from pending to submitted. So this is the front-end code review. Quite a bit more going on here. The big thing to keep in mind, of course, is setting the contract address to the one that you deployed earlier.